There is another author that I wanted to talk about, as you yourself are also an author, but we'll get back to that a bit later. Which is Jordan Peterson. I don't know if you know
No.
this man. He's quite successful in getting people to improve on their lives, and the way he does this is by asking people to create on paper, to write on paper a version of how their lives could be in 5 years if they made all the bad decisions, and how their life might be in 5 years if they made all the good decisions. And basically, what he's doing is he's telling you to feel aversion against the bad version of yourself and to desire the good version of yourself. So his whole vehicle for improvement are using aversion and desire, and he has helped quite a lot of people. He's getting very good reviews, so to say. How would you reflect on this method, and what do you think the pitfalls of that would be?
Well, if that helps people, I don't have anything against it, of course. And it depends also what people are seeking for. So if we take what would be the ordinary approach, just to use the terminology of the discourse, of course, there are better and worse forms of aversion and desire. And we can make rankings. And of course, we can try to use some of that stuff to just manage things and steer them in a better way. And that's fine. If that's the only perspective available, then do it by all means. But most of the problems are actually generated by the sensitivity toward aversion and desire. So the having to feel, having to get to certain states via desire, which usually creates a sense of unfulfillment, because if you wouldn't have that sense of unfulfillment, then there would be no point for desire. Desire is born of some sort of lack. And also the need of changing things, right? This is the basis of aversion. You can't stay where you are because you don't like it. Otherwise, if you would like it, then why changing?
Yeah.
So no matter how you improve your condition, then you're still faced with this constant need to run ahead and move forward and get to something else. So even if you get to your ideal life in 5 years, then that will still suck. And, it will have to change that. And it will be unfulfilling to some extent, because there will be, not because of itself is a problem, but because there will be some desire and aversion that will make you feel lacking something else or not liking something you got. So yes, you can get to a very good position, but even that will be just provisional. And you see, this is a bit something we already discussed. So we always end up in places where we would like to stay, but we can't. And there are two approaches to this. One is then trying to find somewhere else where we can eventually land and stay, or realize that, wow, we can't stay anywhere, so we don't have a problem. So you see, that's the non-ordinary perspective that really tackles not the managing of the particular conditions, but why any particular condition can be a problem in the first place. And I guess in the discourses, this is expressed in a kind of more mythical way, saying that even gods, even forms of life that are overhuman, divine, have exactly the same problem and worries that humans have. So in the discourses, you find people want to be reborn as a deity. And the idea of this thought is that if you really look at that, you'll realize that even gods have to die. And this is quite peculiar of the Buddhist scriptures. But even if you get to the life of a god, today maybe the life of a billionaire, you'll still have the same problems, just on a different scale, different order, maybe different flavor. Maybe, yes, you'll be happy for a certain period, but even that period will end. So it's never going to be the final solution, because the very structure prevents a final solution while also seeking a final solution. So that's the sort of contradiction between what you can get and what you want to get, that they do not match.
So if you base your improvement on aversion and desire, your life can get better, but you do not escape these root issues.
Yeah. Yes.
That is quite interesting, because like the friction that I also feel is like people are definitely improving their lives,
Yes.
but they are also not improving their lives in these fundamental senses.
Yes.
But then I feel like it's difficult to explain these things to people, because you could also take it as well if I think it's very easy to fall into nihilism if you take these ideas and present them to a lot of people, where nothing is stable, everything has to come to an end anyway. It's pretty easy to drop into nihilism and say, well, then it doesn't matter. And how do you prevent that from happening?
Well, by the way, nihilism is contemplated as one of the possible wrong reactions to the Buddhist teaching in the discourses itself.
All right.
So it discusses that as well. So because people were reacting in that way, even at the time, So I guess there are two strategies. So one is that first you do need some degree of well-being before undertaking this practice. So if your life is dreadful, you first need to fix some circumstances before you can have the lucidity for taking major changes, right? So I guess some sort of mundane wisdom would be helpful in that sense, that, you really need to improve on very basic conditions. You do that, first of all. And in that respect, desire might be helpful. And it's compared with taking money on loan, basically, or having a debt. So you borrow money and then you invest that in your business, and then you get something out of it. Now, once you get that, you have another choice to make. Are you going to repay the debt so that you don't have to borrow any money anymore? Or are you just going to the bar and spending everything there? So you have to borrow more money next day. So that's the basic choice. So in a sense, this sort of teaching applies better for people who already are in the conditions of devoting sufficient time to address fundamental questions. If you're in a hurry of very urgent needs and so forth, you're flying because, I don't know, the war or, that sort of things, that's not the right moment to take up the practice that the Buddha describes. Although it might be helpful, but simply it needs time to develop and calm to develop. So in that sense, there is room for this more, let's say, mundane strategies to cope with. And the other way of just, since many things cannot be really seen at the beginning, probably as a pedagogical strategy, it might be helpful to put forward the clearly positive sides of the practice. For instance, that's why one of the reasons why I decided to focus the course and the presentation of these materials from the point of view of friendliness, because I guess everybody can agree that friendliness is good and usually helps and it feels good. So if I explain to anybody, look, you need to be more friendly, I guess that intuitively they can kind of see that there is nothing to worry about in that. And in that sense, you can put forward those elements that are less frightening and also slightly closer to common sense, and using them to explore the deeper background that is behind them. Because of course, friendliness is not aversion. Why developing friendliness? To get rid of aversion or to diminish aversion. Why? Because aversion is the problem. And then we get to the other things we discussed so far. So it can be a, let's say, pedagogically fruitful approach to put forward first those elements that are clearly less frightening in the discourses, and use them as a guideline to explore the rest.